Hey, Corbett here with Turtle Anarchy Brewing Company, giving you part 2 of 5 of Adventure Science Center's Science of Beer Around the World in 80 Brews, happening December 14th. Mini-series where I answer some of your questions to the best of my ability. Today's question comes from Ginny, asking, Corbett, give me the skinny on fermentation. What's the 101 on it? Well, I'd like to answer your question with another question. You ever played Pac-Man? What I want you to imagine, in one of those really big fermenting vessels are hundreds, thousands, millions, billions, trillions of little pack people. Those are the yeast cells. Those are going to be inside the fermenting vessel, and they're hungry, and they want to eat. So what we as brewers do is we take that grain that I talked about in the last video, we mash it up, we extract all the sugars from it, and then we put it inside of that fermenting vessel, giving the pack people, or the yeast, foogers or pack dots to eat. While the pac-men are in there eating all of their sugars, they're slowly multiplying, creating more pack babies or yeast babies and more daughter cells. And over time, all of those sugars are getting eaten up. When all of those sugars are eaten up, the yeast are pretty much full. As I get full, as you get full, as Pac-Man and yeast get full, well, they poop. I poop, you poop, everybody poops. There's a book about it. Actually stole that from one of my colleagues. But not the book, the idea. But, yeah, and as we dispose of our waste and kind of get rid of it, yeast will poop two certain things that are really, really important to the brewing process. First of which is carbon dioxide, is how they used to carbonate beers back in the day. Now we force carb them. And the second is alcohol. I don't know about you guys, but I'm not one for handling excrement too much, and neither are other brewers. And so instead of measuring the exact amount of alcohol that's produced, we'll measure it in a roundabout way. And we'll do that using a hydrometer. There are different types of hydrometers with different buoyancies, and depending on how dense a liquid is, particularly the wort, the beer, will kind of tell us how much sugar is going to be inside of the beer. These measurements are taken in degrees Plato, so when you see something that says like starting gravity 12 degrees Plato, means that there were like 12 sugar units in there, for lack of better terms. We'll always measure the sugar in the very beginning, get a starting point, know how much food we put on the plate before the yeast decide to eat. And we'll measure that every day to kind of like monitor the yeast health and everything else. And then at the end, when the yeast stop eating, that'll allow us to make sure that the yeast are acting properly, are making sure that that sugars are being eaten up, and that the beer is being produced. As yeast is a living organism, much like you and me, there's a lot of funky things that can happen from time to time. The industry, the beer industry, typically measures alcohol in ABV, or alcohol by volume. And in order to do that, we will use these hydrometers to take the starting measurement, which will, I'll get the other one, which will usually start in the heavier one, which is about right there at 14, well, you know, we'll say 12 degrees Plato. And then over time, it's going to sink. And that sinking means that the density of the beer is changing. When we move to a lighter hydrometer, it'll start here. The yeast are eating the sugars, making the liquid less dense, and eventually it's going to stop when they eat all the sugars. For instance, if a beer were to start at 12 degrees Plato and end at 2, that's going to give an ABV of 5.3%. And that's more or less it when it comes to yeast. We can go into a lot more detail when it comes to cellular respiration and aerobic versus anaerobic, and the role that oxygen plays in yeast growth and fermentation and whatnot. But yeah, that's kind of like the skinny. Looking forward to see you guys. If you have any questions, feel free to stop by our booth again at Adventure Science Center, Science of Beer Around the World in 80 Brews, happening December 14th. We're super excited about it, and we've got 3 pretty stellar beers we're wanting to bring. So cheers, we'll see you next time.